Good evening, everyone. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. I want to thank Chelsea and Jordan Woodward, Susie, and everyone that helps put the show together every week. Thank you for joining me tonight. Let's get down to the starting line. We've got a nice show lined up for you tonight. The next time, try this segment. We're going to be talking a little bit about how to prepare things for paint. In the Moto Showcase, we'll be taking a look at a 1974 KX400. Here's the problem. We've got a few really nice things we're going to be talking about tonight, including spokes and a couple of other things. I think you're really going to enjoy it. In the What's It Worth segment, we take a look at a video that Bill Mashino and I have put together. It's all about this 1974 Yamaha MX250. Oh, the 522 project. I'm really looking forward to telling you more about how we're making this cylinder fit in that bottom end. Stick around for that. I'd like you to share the show. Every chance you get, every share helps. No matter where you are, if you're on your phone or you're on your computer, just reach right down now. Please share the show. Also, if you get a moment, tell us where you're watching from. Tell us about what kind of bike you ride. Tell us anything you like. I welcome your comments in the comment section on the show. But please, share the show. And a little bit later on, we're going to have a random winner. And they're going to get some two-stroke injector oil, compliments of AMSOIL. We'll be picking that person at the end of the show. Susie will be telling us more about that as the show progresses tonight. Also, we have YouTube. I'd like you to share that as well. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know, because you could be sitting there right now watching in HD from your television set. So if you're doing that, please let us know in the comment section that you're watching the show tonight on YouTube. And when you get a moment, if you haven't subscribed, go over to our YouTube channel and please do so. Every subscription is a plus. We need your help on that. Please do so. I want to thank our sponsors, Vintco, keep the ride going, AMSOIL, the first synthetic oil since 1973, of course, Preston Petty Products, and FastGuyStuff.com. Next time, try this. I probably get this question more than any other one that is sent into the show, so much that I can't even do it as often as maybe people ask me about it. And the thing is, it's about painting. How do people prepare and paint the black parts for their bike, whether it's cases, ignition covers, hubs, parts like that? A lot of guys will tell you, and this is the greatest rage lately, have them vapor blasted. Well, that's all fine and well, but what if a guy doesn't have a vapor blaster? And what if he doesn't want to mail them to somebody who has a vapor blaster and pay for that? Bead blasting works just as well, but maybe you don't have one. And again, you may not want to lay out the money to have somebody do that. Paint stripper is still the best way to get your painted parts clean. Get some paint stripper from a local hardware store. Aircraft remover is really the best stuff, but it's very, very caustic. If you can get some aircraft stripper, it's great. Strip those parts, get them down to bare aluminum. That's really where a good paint job begins. Get that part down to bare aluminum or bare magnesium, whatever you may be painting. After you get it all stripped off, you can hit it with some Scotch-Brite or with some steel wool and get them nice and clean, just like you see those hubs there in the picture. As far as paint goes, I would recommend VHT chassis and roll bar paint. It comes in a high heat satin black. You'll get results just like that. That's all you really need to do is put the time in to strip it and prepare your parts, and then you can use a quality aerosol paint right out of the can, and you can turn your parts from this into really nice stuff like this. And that's all it takes. It's all about patience, preparation, and prime, and then you're going to get some good results on your paint jobs. So while vapor blasting may be great, and people will tell you about bead blasting, you might want to do it at home. It'll be a little more economical for you, and you get bragging rights to say that you did it yourself. It's all about the preparation. If you have any questions, you can always inbox me from the show, and I'll be happy to tell you more about that process. And if you need any help with that, I'm always there to lend a hand. In the Moto Showcase tonight, we've got a 1974 KX400. This bike was owned by Jeff Schwartz, and it was sent to me to restore a while back. I think I did a really nice job on this bike. And if you want to see more before and after shots, you can always go to Joe Abadi's Cyclotherapy on Facebook. You'll see 100 pictures of everything we did to this bike. It was a nice bike to start off with. It had good bones, but it was a little bit rough. We used the majority of the parts that came with the bike during the restoration. We polished the spokes. We had them replated along with the nipples, and even the fork legs were re-chromed. We had that done as well. The entire engine was rebuilt from top to bottom, all new bearings, all new seals, everything that needed to be replaced. The frame was painted. The original shocks were used. That took a little extra time to get done with the shocks. But as you can see right here, there's the original rims, nipples, and spokes. They came out beautiful. All the plating that was done, the clear zinc that's on that Kickstarter, the polishing that we did on the brake pedal, everything you see there on this bike was done with as many original parts as possible. Of course, gaskets, seat covers, cables, things like that were replaced. But we went to this bike front to back. We used the correct grips, the correct kill switch, levers, perches, everything you see right here. And I want to bring up a point here while we're talking about this bike. Many times people will say you never get back what you put into them. Jeff Schwartz sold this bike shortly after we restored it for him, and he sold it for about $3,500 more than he was into the bike for. It was a quality job. Everything was top shelf. Jeff allowed me to really use whatever I had to use to make the bike right. And it came out really well. That is Nightmare plastic on that bike. It came out really well, and somebody paid him a premium for it. So I want to thank Jeff Schwartz for giving me the opportunity to restore that bike, to explain it to you, the viewers, a little bit. And I hope you enjoyed it. And that's it for this week's Moto Showcase. While I'm thinking about it, you can send in bikes for the Moto Showcase too. I don't want to send Fast Guy Stuff stickers to myself. I don't need to. I've got plenty. Send in your bikes. We'll have them here on the show. We'll feature them. We'll get you some FastGuyStuff.com stickers for having your bike on an episode of Vintage Motocross Q&A. Jordan, what do we got next? Here's the problem. We've got some questions that came into us this week. Jordan, what do we have up first? Tom Cummings, Joe, does a correct restoration mean original hardware restored or NOS? Or will replacement hardware be acceptable? Replacement hardware would not be acceptable if it does not have the correct markings on the heads of the bolts. So no, I would not say that that would be correct. Now, could you use NOS hardware, bolts, nuts? Absolutely. You can do that. It'd be perfectly correct. In this case, where you see right here, this is a whole batch of polished and plated hardware that I used on a restoration. If you want to call it a restoration, you've got to have the right stuff. I think this is imperative. One of the most important things on a restoration is the hardware. You've often heard me say it's 25% of the bike and 75% of the job. If your hardware isn't polished and plated correctly when you go to assemble that bike, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. And if it's incorrect, a lot of it has got to come off. Maybe all of it has to come off in order to make it right, to make your restoration correct. So NOS would be fine. Replated original, absolutely acceptable. Replacement hardware, and not so much. Great on a race bike, but you're going to have some points deducted if you went to show the bike and it had replacement hardware on it. Thanks for the question, Tom. Lenny Fagoni, Joe, would it be acceptable to use stainless steel spokes on a restoration, or for a racer, are stainless steel spokes stronger? I believe they're stronger. Absolutely. They're stronger because they're stainless steel and they're new. Now, could you, I'm sorry, Jordan, just go back to that slide one time, please. Would it be acceptable to use stainless steel on a restoration? Yes, it would be. It'd be very difficult. You'd have to have a very trained eye to see the difference between a stainless steel spoke and a plated spoke, one that was either polished and had clear zinc on it. So yes, I think it's acceptable, and it would be very, very difficult to tell. Also, in the long run, it's always going to look nicer. You could always polish up your stainless steel a little bit, and it's always going to look nice. So in answer to your question, I would say yes on the stainless steel. Unless you have a judge out there and the bike is going to be scrutinized very carefully, they might be able to tell the difference between a stainless steel spoke and a plated spoke. Len, thanks for the question. Glenn Lewis, after a few online bike sales, I'm becoming skeptical about buyers and descriptions I give. Is there a formula I should use? Yes, there is a formula you should use, Glenn, and it's very simple. Take as many pictures as possible, be as forthcoming as you possibly can when it comes to a description. If you have to over-describe it, over-describe it. Don't be afraid to say something has a dent, a scratch, or something isn't quite right. The description is imperative, okay? Another thing that's just as important is pictures like you see right here of this hub. When you get that close with the camera and you take a picture, potential buyers can see exactly what's going on. And if they have a question at that point, fine. You can tell them to review the picture or you can discuss it with them. But that's really the formula, is to be as forthcoming as possible with the description, very close pictures, and don't forget the words in your ad. Please ask any questions. Do that, answer the questions, and you'll be able to sell things with more confidence, and people will be able to buy things confidently as well from you, knowing that they've gotten a straight up answer on any of their questions. Lenny, thanks for the question.
Bill, thanks for joining me for another segment of What's It Worth.
Hello, Joe. Good to be here again.
Today, we're looking at a 1974 Yamaha MX250. Was recently sold for $3,500. The bike looked really, really nice to me. It didn't appear over-restored. What did you see?
Well, it's a nice machine. I saw in the description he called it museum quality. And I guess there's a real broad definition of what's museum quality, but there were a lot of really good finishes on this bike done really well. So it's a pretty solid machine.
I like the hardware on the bike. I couldn't quite tell if it had been polished and replated or it was actually original stuff. That was a plus. The paint was very nice. There were a couple of shortcomings, but nothing very serious. The first thing I saw were the shocks. What about you?
Yeah, the shocks obviously were not OEM. Other things that bothered me were small items that could be easily corrected. The vent tubes were not right on the carburetor or the gas tank cap. There were other little things that could be improved. The tires were obviously modern tires, not period correct.
Yeah.
So there's a number of places where you could really improve this bike for not a whole lot of cost.
I agree. With the tires especially. I think there were a couple of other small things like maybe the kill switch or the grips. But as you said, they were just little things that in an afternoon, if you paid some attention to it, you can get the bike all straightened out.
Yeah.
Both of us know only too well that to restore a bike, you'd have $3,000 or $4,000 in parts and outside services just to begin with. So this bike going for $3,500, I feel the buyer did exceptionally well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the bike was probably under market price-wise by about $1,000. It would, you'd be looking at buying a core bike for at least $2,000, and then you'd have to spend a whole lot of money to get it to this condition. So I would say it was well worth the drive to Utah.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself too. You often hear the expression, "It's too nice to race." Well, yeah, that bike certainly is. And also, if it were in a vintage class 74, I don't really see too many 74 MX250s out there. It's a big class for the Elsinores, the Huskies, maybe even some Suzukis. So I think the market was exceptionally narrow for a really nicely restored MX250, and somebody took advantage of that. So at $3,500 for a bike of that quality, somebody got a really great deal.
That was a great deal. The buyer did really well. I hope the seller's happy as well.
Thanks for joining me again, Bill. We'll see you next time.
Okay, you bet. Good to be here.
The 522 project continues. This is a bike we have been working on for a while. We are replicating the 1974 RC 125. Marty Smith rode in the inaugural 125 Nationals back in 1974. This week, we're going to be talking about the cylinder and what we had to do to get it to fit the bottom end that we're using in this project. Jordan, let's take a look at the video. I'm really excited to tell you about this part of the 522 project. This week, I'm going to show you a little bit about what we had to do with the cylinder. One of the most important parts of this project was, of course, making it a center port. What we used is a 1980 cylinder. That's where we began. Now, What happened was we also wanted to use a 77 head. A 1980 head is a little bit more of a radial look. But when we put that head on our 1980 cylinder, while the bolt holes lined up, the head was actually a little bit smaller than the 1980 cylinder. So what we did was we sanded down, we trimmed all the cylinder head, all the fins rather, going around here. Also on a 1980 cylinder, at the front, due to a double down tube frame on a 1980, these fins are angled a little bit at the front. We cut all those fins off, made new fins, and had them all welded in place, stepping them up on our cylinder. Now, our head fits perfectly, nothing's overlapping, and it looks just as it should for the 522 project. Next week, we'll bring you another installment. Jordan, thanks for putting that together. Great job on the editing. In the product spotlight tonight, drum roll please. We have what, Jordan? Preston Petty products. We are an authorized dealer for Preston Petty. You can visit them online. They're on Instagram, on Facebook, and of course they have a website, PrestonPetty.com. The legend continues, making all those great products we remember from the 70s. I want to thank Paul Standard and Preston Petty for all their help here. This week we have a 10% off across the board on everything from Preston Petty. Inbox me, I'll send you the code. When you go to checkout, you put it in, get a 10% discount on anything you need from Preston Petty products. Tomorrow on the Facebook page, I'll also have the special running there. You'll be able to type in, send me the code. I'll send it to you, 10% off across the board on everything from Preston Petty products. Vinco, boy, they've got some great products over there. Kurt Lieberman, I want to thank him and Vinco for being a sponsor. This week's special is a brake cable for a 1973-74 Honda CR250. Nothing feels better on a bike that has a rear brake cable, where what I'm saying is, in other words, if there's a rear brake cable as opposed to a rod, that cable's got to be in absolutely spectacular condition. It can't be worn, it can't be frayed, and when you get one from Vinco, it's going to exceed the original equipment manufacturer's spec. It's going to fit perfectly. It's going to be as smooth and silk and work like new. For $69.95, you can't beat this deal. It's 790 millimeters long. Go over to the Vinco website. Check this out, along with 650 of their other products. That's for a 1973-74 Honda CR250. Hey, keep sharing the show. Somebody's going to win some oil. Tell us where you're watching the show from. Jordan, let's see what the Vinco commercial has to say tonight.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, only Vinco knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vinco, keep the ride going.
As he says, Vinco.com, keep the ride growing. We do have a winner of the AMSOIL injector oil. And the winner is, Susie tells me, is Brian Taylor. Brian Taylor, thank you for sharing the show. You are the winner of the AMSOIL oil. And if you send us your mailing address, I'll be happy to get that right out to you. Don't forget, still time to send in your questions right here in the comment section. Put in your questions. If I use them on next week's show, we're going to be giving away more stuff from AMSOIL. In that comment section, please send in your questions, whatever it might be. It could be about paint, restorations, values on bikes, whatever it might be. Put it in the comment box. If we use it on the show, you're going to win some AMSOIL starting next week. Got the announcements, Jordan. What's up first? Oh, VMX Radio. It's going really, really good. I had Jimmy Weinert as my guest this past week. Jordan's going to run a couple of snippets from that. It was great having the jammer on. Then I'm going to tell you who my guest is for next week. and some additional information. Jordan?
I went over to Kawasaki in 73 and 74 and got the championship in 74 in the open class. And then we were negotiating for 75, and it just seemed like Cowie, they wanted me, but this is going to sound funny, but we always had like ping pong tournaments in the back.
Yeah.
And they like to play ping pong. And I kept saying, guys, come on, let's get this done, blah, 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 blah. So one time I said, look, if you don't want to get it done, I'm going to go over to Yamaha, and they're going to sign me. And I guess they didn't take me serious. And I went over to Yamaha, and they signed me.
All over a ping pong game.
Basically.
You know, with the time you were with Cowie, you had the 250 Supercross Championship. You had, of course, a national championship too. What possessed Kawasaki to ever ask you to try and ride a 125?
Well, I kind of did that myself. We had about 5 or 6 weeks off, and I said, hey, can I go race the 125 so I can, stay in shape and stay sharp? And they agreed to it. But then the problem was I did so damn good on it. I'm out there battling with Hannah and the guys. And then they wanted me to race it the next year, and I said, it's impossible because I can't get that light.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I got down to 155 pounds, but back then, the bikes aren't like they are now. I could probably have been 160, 65 and be competitive on one, Yeah. Now, but back then, it was rough. Matter of fact, the first race I did, I'm battling with Hannah, and I run out of gas, like 2 laps to go. So I come in and talk to Steve Johnson. I said, so let me get this straight. I'm going to go back out there again. I'm going to be battling with Hannah or leading this thing, and I'm going to run out of gas. And he goes, probably so.
Will be International 6-Day Enduro Gold Medal winner Chris Carter. If you're familiar with the name Motion Pro when it comes to tools, and I bet you everybody listening has a Motion Pro tool somewhere in their shop, Chris Carter is the guy responsible for that. Chris had a long career between racing enduros, racing some motocross, and of course, supplying all of us with those great tools from Motion Pro. I look forward to speaking to Chris Carter this Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Vintage Motocross Radio. Also, on Sunday, either before or after the Chris Carter interview, I will be announcing when you're going to be able to hear the Jaroslav Falta interview. It's very, very close. I almost want to say something to you about it right now, but I'll have everything firmed up in the next 24 to 36 hours, and you're going to know on Sunday, either before or after the Chris Carter interview, when you're going to be hearing the Jaroslav Falta interview on Vintage Motocross Radio. I'm so happy to announce another sponsor. It's a great guy, been a friend for a long time, and he has been committed, devoted to the Kawasaki plastic line for the last 18 years. Mark Hildebrand and Nightmare Racing will be a regular here on the show starting next Wednesday. So I want to welcome Mark Hildebrand. Thank you for all your years of service, for supplying all that great plastic for Kawasaki. It's the only stuff I'll use on my restorations, and we're looking forward to seeing some of your products here on Vintage Motocross Q&A. Hey, there's a vintage motorcycle race coming up, and it's in La Mocha MX. That is in Bradford, New York. It's coming up on August 17th and 18th. A lot of races have been canceled this summer due to the COVID-19 problem, but you got one coming up out in Bradford, New York on August 17th and 18th. It is an ARMA event. Go to their website, see what's going on there. It's a big chance for you to race before the summer's over. Get out there, get the dust off that bike, and go out and have some fun. T-shirts are still available, $21.99. You've seen me wear them here on the show. Jordan's got one. If you've bought one, you want to take a picture of yourself in it, why don't you send it in to us? We're going to put up a little showcase, a little thing going on with people wearing their Vintage Motocross Q&A T-shirts. $21.99. It's a really great shirt. Order one today. FastGuyStuff.com supplying us with stickers every week for the bikes that are in the Moto Showcase. I want to thank Sean Gomes, everybody at FastGuyStuff.com, for being such a great supporter of Vintage Motocross Q&A. Sponsorship opportunities are still available. Now, as you just heard, we have Mark Hildebrand coming on board with Nightmare Racing. I only have so much real estate behind me to give up. Okay. So I have some room for Mark Hildebrand. We're going to do a little redecorating here in the next week or so. But after that, I probably only have one spot left, maybe two, depending on what package you buy, in the opportunity that you have to be here on the show as a sponsor. Now, we are in, believe it or not, this is the 43rd episode of Vintage Motocross Q&A. I don't think Vinco or Amsoil was on board, or Preston Petty, or FastGuyStuff.com, maybe the first 10 episodes. But for 33 weeks they've been there. They've stuck by us. They've been on the program, and they're seeing results. If they weren't seeing results, you wouldn't see their sign up here every week. So if you want to get in on the action, there's a couple of spots left. Send me an email. Send me something in the inbox. I'll get you a proposal. We'll put something together that's going to fit your budget. Right here on Vintage Motocross Q&A, you could be a sponsor. And we also run your product on the Sunday show too. And that thing's growing about as fast as it can. I mean, with interviews like Jimmy Weiner, Garrett Walsink, Brad Lackey, Terry Good, we've had some really incredible people on the show. So every time somebody goes over to the radio show and listens to that, your slide comes up with your product on it. You might want to take advantage of that. Something to think about. That's it. I want to thank all the viewers for listening tonight. Thank our sponsors, of course, once again, Vinco, Amsoil, our new sponsor, Nightmare Racing, FastGuyStuff.com, and of course, Preston Petty Products. Don't forget to listen to our radio show on Sunday. Gino! This dog is late every week. I tell him every Wednesday at 5:30, don't be late for the queue. I don't think he's going to make it tonight. Gino! We're out of time. No Gino tonight. I'm sorry, but thank you for watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. We'll see you next week.